Hello, everybody. Welcome to the HR Roundtable. We're so glad that you're able to join us today. Very excited to be talking about this topic, navigating turbulence, stress management strategies to lead through uncertain times. We certainly know that there is an awful lot going on right now in the world. And from an HR perspective, as HR professionals, a lot of us are on the forefront of that. I think we are regardless of what we do, we are dealing with that day to day, both in our personal and our professional lives. And we're so very happy today to have Rachel Bain here with us. She's a consulting psychologist who supports leaders struggling through chaos and change as they work to grow their organization. These include legal professionals, STEM-based companies, and other service-based organizations operating in an always on, high stakes environment. Chaos can feel like being curled up in the fetal position or running around, putting out fire after fire, or straight up burnout. Her services include private coaching, manager and business unit training, a firm-wide firm-wide climate assessments. She's a PhD candidate in business psychology and holds a national certification in health and wellness coaching, supporting sustainable high performance. Rachel, we're so glad to have you with us today and look forward to being able to walk away with some definitely actionable takeaways. I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds good. I am honored to be here. So first off, please engage in the chat. If you have, I will do questions at the end, kind of Q&A at the end, but I have a few kind of engagement questions throughout. But if you just absolutely can't hold it, throw it in the chat and then we'll get to it towards the end. Feel free to send the reactions, all of that good stuff. So I'm just going to jump right in and really kind of explain the opening slide. So I had this, PJ and I were talking before about speaking boldly and just meeting people where they're at. And I had this very professional title with a picture that looked more like somebody sailing in the storms. But what people have really appreciated is the unofficial title of this, which is how to respond when life punches you or your organization in the face. So we're going into that. This is, part of a larger coaching series, certainly, but my goal, as PJ said, is just to give you a few tips. One, help you feel like you are not alone. Look how many people are here to talk about this, to get those actionable strategies. At the very end, or if you want to do it, you can do it right now. You can email me. You will get a copy of the slide deck, but I have a handout that just has a little bit more resources, like actual exercises that you can do so you don't have to furiously take notes. And then you can even just book a session with me where you can say, that was lovely, a general conversation. How the heck do I apply it to this specific instance that I'm going through? So with all of that said, raise your virtual hand, or if you can't find it, just your physical hand. How many of you have ever taken your feelings out on the wrong person? I know I have, right? You suddenly realize, why did I yell at the Uber driver who was 5 minutes late with my order, right? Or ooh, didn't mean to snap at the kids. We have all done it. So Fast Company wrote that they have a headline out that said, this was a while ago, but they said, stress hijacks our ability to make good decisions. They are wrong, with all due respect. Stress doesn't do that. Poorly managed stress does that. So the first thing is that stress is just stress. It is not innately terrible. It is not going to kill you just because it's there. It's how we tell the story about it, what we attach to it, that hijacks that decision making. And that's really the most critical thing. And we will talk about how. But first, just in the chat, with no other information or tools yet, how would you rate your ability to recognize those early signs of stress in yourself, right? How quickly do you think you can recognize, ooh, I'm stressed out? Listen, I'm seeing some numbers. Good. Most of you are very in tune. Awesome. So this is a question because it may seem silly, but actually it's kind of really hard unless we've really been working on self-awareness. That's why you're like, oh my God, my jaw feels really tight at the end of the day because I've been clenching it for hours. Why does my dentist say I've been grinding my teeth through in my sleep? Why are my shoulders up by my earlobes? A stress headache. We hang on to these things because sometimes we don't realize that we've been carrying that. We think that because we've dealt with the thing that stressed us out or causes those emotions called the stressor, we've dealt with the stress, the emotion, the feeling in us, but we haven't. So just because we've like dealt with the email doesn't mean we've processed out what that email did to us, right? So I'm going to dig into this a little bit more in the next slide, kind of what is actually happening, but the chemical reaction that causes stress or that causes any sort of emotion lasts less than 90 seconds unless we hold on to it and tell a story about it. And that is what we are so good at doing, right? So when we hold on to it, when we give it meaning, then we kick off this fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and kind of stay stuck in this. And we all have a tendency to go more into one than the other, or we can cycle through them depending on the situation. Most people have heard of fight, flight, freeze, I think, but not as many people have heard of fawn. And even if you've heard of the fight, flight, freeze, it can come up in ways that you may not expect. And this is really important, not only to recognize in yourself, but in your colleagues, the employees that you're managing, the managers who are trying to manage those employees. And it really helps give you a level of empathy and find other entry points into managing that individual. So the fight, quick to anger, argumentative, but also heightened activism or advocacy. So let's say you're on Facebook and suddenly this connection, you like, wow, they never used to post about the news. And suddenly all they're doing is posting about the news. What is going there? That is their fight. That is their stress response. They are freaking out. And the way they show that, right, is by posting this way. More aggressive communication. If you've ever been asked a question and you like came back really defensive and you're like, oh God, I didn't mean to sound that way. It's because something in you was reacting to what you felt like was a threat in what that person said. Hypervigilance and over preparedness. The flight is, we can, disengaging from news, social media, immersing ourselves in distractions. So you're running away by running into something else. Avoidance of the threat or emotion, of course, disconnecting from other people and isolating. So this kind of retreat, withdrawal into what you feel like is this safe space. We have the freeze, feeling stuck, unable to make decisions, that analysis paralysis, emotional numbness, detachment, maintaining our routines robotically, difficulty processing complex information. So we just kind of shut down. And even if we're still doing stuff, right, it's that robotic nature of it. And then the fawn is, right, it's down here, and it's that over compliance. I like to, if it's easier, think about it like becoming the chameleon. Your opinion is my opinion. Don't threaten me. I'm just like you, right? So if you think about an animal being attacked, they're either going to fight back, they're going to run away, they're going to play dead, or they're going to go, no, 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 I'm one of you. Don't hurt me. I'm one of you. You have to know, again, that your stress response, the way that you typically engage, the way you typically respond, to recognize as soon as possible when you're entering that stress response, so that you can make that last as short as possible, 90 seconds instead of like 2 years or 2 days or the whole day, right? This is how we start to shift stress into what I call a strategic advantage, which will kind of cycle to. But first, I just want to give you a little bit of insight into what is actually happening, because I've said it takes 90 seconds. And, some of you might go, okay, well, she's the expert. Okay, 90 seconds. That seems weird. I've certainly been stressed longer than that about the same thing. So I just want to make sure that you understand what I mean when I say that, because I find that information to be really helpful, and usually folks do as well. So your brain, we're all alive, our brain is going. And what's happening at any given time is we're thinking, we're feeling, and we're having some sort of physiological response to what we're thinking and feeling, right? So how we're reacting to what's happening around us. So I was at a Nova Sherm event all day yesterday, the Legal Academy. And what I was hearing from some of the employment attorneys there is that every day what they're hearing from their clients, from their HR clients, is more and more employees saying, I'm too stressed, I can't work. I'm too stressed, I can't work. And so imagine you get an email from an employee saying, I'm too stressed, I can't work. And you're like, oh my God, again. Like, so you get this email, you have this, right? Your jaw might get tense. Oh man, I just saw that, Griselda. Sorry I missed you. It would have been fun to connect. Your jaw might get tense. Your heart might be beating faster. You might start breathing more quickly, right? You're just like, oh, these people. And then you're like, okay, no, I'm supposed to be empathetic. I'm supposed to be on their side, even as I straddle the organization. Like I'm on the organization side, I'm on their side. Like you're trying to straddle all of that, contain the emotion, right? And still take care of yourself at the same time. So all that's going through. And what happens is the chemicals, the stress chemicals start going through, flooding our bloodstream, telling us that we need to respond to this crisis. And between that thought happening and the chemicals fully processing out of the bloodstream, it takes less than 90 seconds. This is from the research by Dr. Jill Bolt-Taylor. But what happens is that we keep thinking the thought, and so we stay in the loop. So it's like not just 90 seconds, it's a 90-second loop over and over and over again until we finally go, okay, this is not helpful. Let me think about something else, or let me process this through, or I've learned these healthy coping mechanisms, right? Or we just churn and churn. And so the goal is, again, to recognize as soon as possible, that happened. Okay, how do I not react forever? And how do I kind of take a more, for lack of a better word, cognitive approach, right? How do I think through that more clearly as opposed to just react to it? So hopefully that all made sense. So with that said, kind of a quick review of the different ways, the 4 different ways. What does stress look like for you? It can be all of the above. Again, it really can depend on the situation. But I find that some folks know, 9 times out of 10, I'm the fighter. Or 9 times out of 10, I like to crawl in bed and hide from the world or hide in the bathroom, right? So does anybody feel like they fight more, they flee more, freeze or fawn more? And you can just throw that in the chat, which one of those you think that you tend to fall into. I'll give you a minute. Freeze, flight, flee, freeze. Yeah. Fight at first. Awesome. Sometimes for me, it depends on how confident I feel. So if I feel like I'm right, I'm like, oh, we're going. But if I'm not so sure, I might kind of, whatever you say. Awesome. So again, and you will understand in a minute why there are oranges on this slide, right? So we have these acute stressors. We have these things coming at us, right? The news. And that's the short term. It's also something as simple as, oh, I'm going to give a presentation, right? We feel it like, oh, okay, here we go. I'm going to go ask for the raise. Here we go. And we can use that to propel us to innovate, to respond, to pivot or not. And when we don't deal with the stressor or the stress, the feels of it, right? Then we move into chronic stress. So if the acute stress stays long enough, it becomes chronic. And if it becomes chronic, we start moving into kind of the burnout cycle, which is like honestly a whole other presentation I won't go into too much. The reason there are oranges is because what happens when you squeeze an orange? You get orange juice, right? What happens when I used to say compressed grapes, and I was thinking I was going to get grape juice, and everybody said wine. So I will not ask that now. But when you squeeze really anything, right, out comes what's inside. So think about yourself as these little stress oranges. And when you are squeezed, You're just spewing stress juice everywhere, right? Emotions are contagious, stress is contagious, burnout is contagious. And when you are squeezed enough, like there's nothing left in you, hence the fist here at the end where just you're done, right? So if you like visuals, there's one for you. You are spewing stress juice over everyone. So we do not want to be spewing stress juice over everyone, right? So we need to figure out how do we stop doing that? And one of the next steps is understanding the impact that that has on our team as a leader, on ourselves, which will be the next slide. And just to point out, these are all things you can also take back to your team, because I'm sure there's some managers who you're like, God, I wish they could hear this. And I'm happy to talk with you about that. But these are all tips that you can take back to them, right? With learning development in for your management staff or for employees, especially as they might be transitioning into becoming new managers. So first, I'm going to talk about what it does to the team. Then I'll talk about what it does to you. And then we'll move into like exercises that you can use in those acute situations so that they don't become chronic. So the fancy nerdy term is affect contagion. It means it's contagious, as I've said. So emotions are contagious, impacts your culture, reduces morale and motivation, decreases productivity and engagement. Peer-to-peer, it's contagious. Leader to peer or leader to employee, it's faster. Does that make sense? The contagion happens more quickly because you have more weight, right? It increases conflict and tension, of course. I mean, some of this is kind of, okay, as you know, as you think about it, it's a little obvious. So stress leaders, more prone to negative behaviors, exacerbating conflicts and increasing tension with the team. I mean, I joked earlier about you take it out on like the Uber driver who's late with your delivery or whatever, but I've certainly had a manager yell at me, not because I did anything wrong, although it felt like it at the time, but because they were stressed, right? They had something going on with them. It was about them, not me, but I was there, right? Team members may not be able to cope well with the stress that they feel under those situations, and they're more prone to leave, or worse, stay, but just kind of not do as much, like be as like under the radar as possible. It decreases creativity and innovation, right? People are hesitant to think outside the box and takes risks because they don't want to set you off or don't want to set that leader off. Certainly then reduced well-being, right? That stress impacts everybody else's stress physically, mentally, emotionally, which can lead out to burnout, anxiety, and depression in the team. And then you have the healthcare costs of that, and then increased PTO, and then the other team has to step, and then those ripple effects, right? That we know have happened. And then it becomes, we're not just measuring the bottom line costs from the direct impacts, but the indirect as well. And this is where if you saw some of the research coming out where they're saying burnout can cost tens of thousands of dollars per employee, it's not just because it in of itself costs that, it's because of the direct and indirect costs adding up. So increased turnover and then reduced employee performance. So just think back to a time that you had a manager, to a manager that you had or worked with who you could tell was really stressed, right? Like, what did that look like? How did it impact you and your team? And this is a big question, so you kind of screenshot it if you want and reflect on it later. But I just want to give you a minute to think back, like, when has this been presented to you? When have you been on the receiving end of a manager who didn't know how to really manage their own emotions and kind of took it out on you or another member of the team? And while you're doing that, I can tell you that that manager that I had, it took more than one decade for me to realize that it wasn't about me and really, really, really understand, partly because it took a while for me to be ready for it because it was really a bad situation. To understand that, okay, he was actually feeling probably a lot of imposter syndrome. It was shortly after a merger where or maybe it was technically an acquisition actually, but he went from being a big fish in a small pond to being a very, very, very small fish in a very big global pond and probably didn't know how to handle it. and wanted perfection because of his own insecurity, right? That was almost 20 years ago. It took a really long time for me to get there. Um, and there was a lot of impacts to my own career and choices I made because I was carrying that with me. So we don't want that for the team. And just to be clear, I left that after 6 weeks. So that turnover happens, right? And it's not cheap. So then what happens to you, right? Some of it is the same, right? Reduced creativity, impaired judgment, right? Judgments, decisions are based on immediate emotional responses rather than careful consideration. This one is interesting. You can have both increased and decreased risk taking. And here's what I mean by that. You might take unnecessary risks due to heightened emotional, or like your emotions are heightened. You might take decreased risk for this, the analysis paralysis, and that ties back into knowing how you respond in different situations, right? Empathy goes down, poor communication, lack of strategic thinking, increased defensiveness, decreased adaptability, and then, of course, burnout, which I mentioned. So when the emotions run the show, when they're poorly managed, stress makes those decisions not you, right? It can become costly to the organization, to your team, to your relationships, to your personal relationships. And this could be, you have work is fine, but stress in your daily life is there and you bring it into work, or life is fine but you take work into the life, right? None of us live in severance, right? So we're not, if you watch the show. So we are human beings, we are complex, as are the employees, and so we just don't know how certain things are going to come out and influence the other areas of our life. This pencil here, so we've all heard of work-life balance. I hate that term personally. Just to tell you my bias right now for it, I hate it because balance makes it seem like it's a destination. And so it's like you'll never arrive. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, I wave a wand and now we all have work-life balance. Okay, well, then it's kind of like, nobody move. I finally got there. Like, don't rock the boat. It's completely unrealistic. The other thing is that it makes it sound like work and life are separate. Work is a part of life. It's all life. And lastly, because it makes it sound like work is all bad and life is all good. But work can be this place where we connect with amazing human beings, where we get to tap into our personal passions and purpose, right? It can be very fulfilling. And life has like laundry and traffic, right? And people yelling at us sometimes because, I don't know, they're children or whatever. So at the end of the day, the better way to think about this is, are the demands on you, wherever they might be coming from, greater than the resources you have within you? And if the demands on you, this pressure on you, is greater than your resources to withstand it, to fight against it, you will break. As will your employees, as will the managers. But if they are not, then you can have that resilience, right? So in the nerdy world, we call this the demands resources model. So the rewards of being able to lead under crisis, and by lead, I mean lead yourself and also your team, right? Or teach your managers how to lead the team in crisis leadership. The rewards are basically the opposite of all the bad things I already said, like the Philips 2 slides, right? So when managed well, stress can be a catalyst for growth, innovation, improvement. It can strengthen trust. It can increase motivation and commitment. And this is where we get into it becoming that strategic advantage, right? Where your competitors are over there freaking out. Like PJ said when she was reading my bio, like curled up in the fetal position or just running around. Like some days they feel like the person whacking the mole, and other days they feel like the mole. You're over here like, cool, what else you got? I'm good. I can react. I can respond. You're like the basketball March Madness, we'll use that, right? You're the team on the court that's winning because you're able to be present in the moment and pivot and react and respond to what the other team is giving back at you. As opposed to the other people who are like, I don't know, we had a plan. It's not going according to plan. What do we do? And they're falling apart. So when managed well, improved decision-making, improved confidence, increased resilience, productivity, communication and collaboration, problem-solving skills, morale and retention, again, give you that competitive edge and succeed in a crisis when others fail. So how do we do that? It's like, great, that sounds lovely. How do we tap into that? Crisis leadership research shows that we need the following skills: adaptability and strategic flexibility, just adaptability, effective communication, right? So I know of some leaders where they had to lay up, the command went down, right? Their government contracting firm, situation is what it is. They need to do a layoff. That CEO is on vacation. The people have been laid off, but that person is still on vacation. And there's not been any sort of communication from on high down to the rest of the employees that, hey, here's what's going on, addressing the situation, right? People need communication. Negativity fills that void. Strategic problem solving, proactive leadership, trust and integrity, values-driven leadership, right? The values of the organization can't just be on the wall. They have to be part of the daily experience of every employee. Accountability and hope. And then this is probably the most important part for today, is your own well-being. Because if your needs aren't being met, you cannot do the other things, right? And this is really where a lot of my leadership workshops kind of focus, is on energy management, which includes emotional intelligence. And what we call this is widening our window of tolerance. So, you have the fight and flight and freeze and fawn around this window. And the window is our optimal stress zone, right? It's how we can handle that roller coaster of life in a healthy, productive way. The wider the window, or the more open the window, the more pressure we can handle. When we can't handle the pressures of the day, right? That broken pencil or the moment, we are pushed outside our window of tolerance. And again, then we get into that fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And so to lead ourselves and to lead others well, we have to have as wide a window as possible. Right? This is my attempt to show you a before and after of an expanded window. So how do we then turn this into a strategic advantage, right? How do we widen this window? We do it through investing in ourselves. More popularly, it's called self-care. My other bias is I hate the word self-care. Like, it just rubs me the wrong way. Increasingly, I feel like it rubs the people I work with the wrong way. It's become a little commercialized. And so now it feels, and you absolutely can disagree with me, by the way. If self-care works for you, please use it. Whatever works for you, please use it. But for a lot of people I talk with, it feels like this thing that is now very luxurious, that they have to really, really earn. It's like only after they've collapsed their way across the finish line will they go get a facial. Like, that's what self-care has become, or the fancy candle. Self-care is also like personal hygiene, going to the doctor, taking your prescriptions, flossing your teeth. Like, it is taking care of yourself, right? As much as it is getting that massage, going to the spa, like whatever your thing is, right? Getting out on the court with friends, engaging in hobbies, or just finding a way where no one talks to you for a day, right? Like, whatever you need to do. So we widen our window by investing in ourselves. And that includes self-awareness, so we know we can read ourselves, emotional intelligence, so we know, why am I reacting the way I'm reacting? What might you be thinking and reacting? Why? Right? Training that adaptability and agility, protecting our mental and physical health. Because again, if we don't, that acute stress becomes chronic, becomes burnout. I've already said that costs tens of thousands per employee. Workplace stress and burnout kills 200,000 people every year in the United States. I think it was 2016 where OSHA released this, but I can double check it. It's 745,000 people died globally from ischemic heart disease and stroke because they worked over 55 hours a week. Not just 1 week, to be clear. And when I tell that into a room full of lawyers, a lot of them start freaking out. So I will tell you one other piece to that is that I don't believe it's just on the face they worked more than 55 hours a week. I think it's because I know people who work long hours, but they take those little micro breaks throughout, like they're able to, again, handle those pressures. So there's more to that story, but it is still an eye-opening number to think about because how many people do work those excessive hours and do not take care of themselves along the way, right? And that's really what we're talking about. So if you think back to a time where you felt a really strong negative emotion, because again, we're never worried about the positive. Please have all the positive emotions you want as strongly and longly as possible. But a strong negative emotion, were your needs being met? Was there an unmet need fueling the emotion, right? Lack of sleep, lack of exercise. I work out every morning, and if for some reason I will get grumpy even anticipating that I'm not going to get to work out, right? Like when DC might shut down for like 2 inches of snow, I'm like, but I can still get to the gym, right? Like I will protect that. It is like sacred time for me. Poor diet. Have you ever like, kind of the foods that sort of just, they taste good going down, but they kind of make you feel gross later. And then you're a little bit snappier at people, right? No time for yourself, feeling isolated, lonely, right? There's a balance there. We need social time and we need personal time. Lack of sleep. Yeah. No time for yourself. Yeah. Awesome. And thank you again for all the comments in the chat. So then what tools do we need to know that they're being met? So if you think about your car, you have a car. It came with an owner's manual. I'm not saying that you had to have read it, but it's there. We did not come with that, unfortunately, right? So I try to help my clients build what we call their owner's manual to know themselves well enough to know like what alert is going off and what is it telling you and how do I fix it? Or who do I need to go to help me fix it? Like technically I could probably learn how to change my own oil, but I'm not going to. I'm going to take it somewhere, right? So, but I know people who love to change their own oil. So what do you need to do for yourself and who is on your team to help you with that, right? So I'm going to give you some examples of tools. Again, if you want the handout with kind of this guide and a collection of more of them, please email me. Because we just don't have time to go into all of them and practice all of them. But remember to come at this with a lot of curiosity. Because, the saying, right? Like if you only have a hammer, everything's a nail. Not every tool is appropriate for every situation or every person, right? People, when they learn what I do, they assume I like yoga and meditation. I do not. I am not saying they are bad. Please go yoga to your heart's content. I don't like it. It's not my place. Also, I'm hypermobile. It's actually not very good for me, right? I have other things that I do that meet that need. If you want to start exercising, but you hate running, please don't run. There are other ways to move your body and make it fun, right? So give yourself permission to experiment. And it is okay if not one of these tools work for you, but understand the goal of them so you could go find something that hits the goal in another way. Does that make sense? So the idea is to give yourself, yes, dancing like no one's watching. Sometimes you have a little dance party in your office, right? Incentivize yourself to do the administrative work no one wants to do. So know your needs, know what meets them. What do you need to do daily, weekly, monthly to keep those resources high enough to meet the demands on you, When the indicator light goes off, know who you need to reach out to help you. So the first tool is a grounding technique. This is really good when you're kind of like, everything is coming at me, right? You're the mole being whacked, right? So the tool is the 5 4 3 2 1. If you've heard of this, feel free to throw in the chat like, yes, I've used it. It's great for kids too. If you have kids in your life, like I have a nephew and he doesn't need it yet, but I'm ready if he does. So it's 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch, 3 things I can hear, 2 things I can smell, 1 thing I can taste. You go through your senses, right? So 5 things you can see. I got like more than 5 colored pencils right there, right? 4 things you can touch. It may even just be like, okay, self-hug, right? But even just the surface of my desk. Now, oftentimes we can get stuck in, I have to use the tool perfectly. And now the thing that was supposed to help you de-stress stresses you out because you're away from your notes and you're like, all this stuff's coming at me. What is that thing that Rachel said? It's what do I do? And now you're freaking out because you're not doing it right. Another example of that is you're lying in bed and you're like, I know I should sleep, but I can't fall asleep. And now I'm beating myself up for not sleeping. And why can't I go to sleep? And I have to go to sleep right now or else I won't get 8 hours. And then the idea of rest stresses you out, right? So the goal, focus on the goal, not remember that remember the goal, as opposed to getting so stuck on practicing the thing perfectly. If you are away from your notes and you want to practice this technique, but you can't remember the order, what we did when I was in, when I was in acting, well, now I've just opened that can of worms. So once upon a time, I was an actor. And what we did in theater school, one of the exercises was to take the first thing. It's the same thing. For the first thing, right? Patricia PJ has this beautiful shade of lipstick. That's like the first thing I see, right? Sorry to pick on you, but you're right there. Very white walls in my office, or I guess there may be more of like an eggshell. But you'll notice that as you pay really close attention, and it gets you out of this reactive state and into, okay, I'm thinking, I'm processing, right? You kind of brings you down. Another one that you can do is just have a grounding stone or object, a scent. They make those roller fragrances now. You can throw one in your purse, have one at your desk, and just like a calming scent. You don't have to pay a lot of money for it. It doesn't have to be a fancy, like this is labeled as a calming scent, right? Just like find something. At the end of the day, how do you signal to yourself that work is work and it's over? When I was consulting at the Department of State, when I would leave the office, I would take my badge off. I would walk out the doors, I would take my badge off, and it was like freedom. I don't do that now, right? I work for myself in my house usually. So what I found is I actually had missed that. So I have the glasses that you'd have the toppers off. So at the end of every day, now this is the only thing you're gonna remember me for it, but is I take like the toppers off my glasses and now it's reset for the next day. And whatever the outfit is, like that's what the topper is. So find some way to signal to yourself that work mode is done. And now you're the rest of you again, right? There's a 4-7-8 breath. That is one of my absolute favorites. I see some head nods. It is great just before sleep as well. You breathe in for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. You do it 4 times total. As you get better, you can kind of count more slowly. There is the circle of control exercise. So you have 3 circles within each other. One is like no control, some control, most control. So what if this situation is happening that I have no control over, some control over, most control over? And where am I hanging out? Most of the time, we're revved up about something because we're hanging like that anxiety or depression. And I don't mean clinically, I mean like anxiousness and sadness, feelings of depression, to be clear, is that we are hanging out in that circle of like no control. So what we want to do is bring it down. Well, what do I have control over? Where can I focus? Right? The Can I break down the things that are in the no control into smaller steps to give me some control? And sometimes you can, and sometimes honestly, the only thing that you have control over is your attitude. And that is like the hardest one, right? But sometimes that's just kind of the way it is. And we have to reframe how we're approaching the situation or just accept. And as soon as we do, like, my God, it is so freeing. And you'll find actually you have more options once you do that and you can see more clearly. Um, and then the biggest thing, like if I was pressed into a corner and said, okay, you can only tell them one thing to do, I would tell you this: take micro breaks throughout your workday. Raise your real hand or virtual hand if you ever heard it is a marathon, not a sprint. As somebody who has run both, I think that is a dumb analogy. Again, if it works for you, right? Like, please take anything I say with a grain of salt, right? The idea is really to find the tools that work for you. But here's why I don't like it. So I work with a lot of people that have a lot of stuff coming at them every day. When you run a marathon, you're kind of slow and steady. I mean, unless you're one of those people that's like really like, I'm going to run it in 2.5 hours because I'm that fast, right? If you're like an average human, you're running and you're going at a steady pace. And you may do a quick pause to get some water at the station, grab some of the gummy bears, right? Um, if you ever do run a marathon, really be mindful of what they're handing you, because I thought somebody was handing me water once and it was beer and I don't drink, and that was very gross. So just be mindful of the rest stops that you're stopping at, but you're kind of going at a steady pace. Yeah, you walk marathons, exactly. How many of you feel like you could just run at a steady pace for your entire career? Absolutely. Most of the people that I work with, that is not the way their daily experience is. But it isn't a sprint. A sprint is like done. You are in a series of sprints every day, right? Every day has a series of sprints. So if you have heard of, you don't have to have done it, but if you have heard of this thing called high intensity exercise, that's like a better analogy for what we do, right? So high intensity exercise is like series of intervals. But do you know what they do so that they can do those series of high intensity intervals? They rest between the intervals. And most of us are trying to do these series without any sort of rest, right? The only reason you can go really hard for 20 seconds and then rest for 10 and then 20 seconds and have a workout done in 4 minutes is because you've rested 10 seconds so you can go to the max for 20. So you have to find these ways in your day to take these quick little resets. And a micro break is 20 seconds to 5 minutes. We can all find 20 seconds, right? Stare at nature. Play a game on your phone. I don't care what you do. Just don't do work for 20 seconds, a few times a day, and build up to where it's like, oh, wow, I gave myself permission to do a 5 minute break, right? I ate lunch, not like hovering over my computer. Whatever you need to do, right? And then this is an example. I have this in the handout of the emotions wheel, which helps you kind of build your emotional vocabulary. So as you're doing a lot of this work, as you're self-reflecting, as you're building that self-awareness, as you're looking at what you don't control, have some control over, or mostly can control, if you're like, oh, that made me feel, a lot of times we just say stressed. Well, what is stress? Can be many things. What does that mean? I'm angry. Are you angry or just frustrated? Does it matter? Right? And so as we get better at naming what we are feeling, it helps us better regulate them, right? Um, the last piece I would say is get in the habit of rather than all or nothing thinking, an always something mindset. So I was speaking with someone earlier today, a new client, and she was like, well, I have to, she's gearing up for the bar exam. And she's like, well, I realize I need to take more walks. I love walks. They make me feel better. They help me process my stress. But I also need to study. And I'm like, well, why is it an or thing? Why isn't an and thing? Like, how long does it take you to walk? And she's like, well, because when I go, I always go this amount. And I'm like, do you have to always go that amount? I realize that's ideal, right? And I sounded kinder than maybe I am right now. But the idea is that, right, like we need to challenge our thinking. Other times somebody might say, well, I don't have time to work out. That may be true. Like I have my people that literally, I do not know how they do what they already do, let alone add this in. Right. But other times it's because we have this idea, because like for working out, it used to be like, well, I used to be on the track team and track practice was always 4 hours. So to me, that's exercise. Right. So how can we reframe some of these assumptions? Even I have a million emails. I've seen some people's inboxes, but you may also just have like 100. And it may not take you a million years, right? It may take you like 30 minutes, right? And so just getting better at like more specifically naming things, whether there are things coming at us or the emotions that we're feeling in response to them, can really help us kind of better manage the stories that we're telling to ourselves, and get us more in that 90-second loop than like the 2 hour, 2 week, 2 month, 2 year loop, right? So kind of key points here, wrapping up, moving to the Q&A, is that you really just need to build your toolbox. Give yourself permission to explore a bunch of different tools and techniques. Understand yourself well enough to know what light is going off and what tool you need to turn it back off again. These are normal reactions to stress. The fight, flight, free, fawn, right? There's nothing wrong with anyone here. We are human beings, and this is how we are designed, for better or worse, right? These can be adaptive, right? You can turn it again into that strategic advantage. It's when they become chronic and start messing with the rest of our lives that they become problematic. And so understanding your typical stress response, what you are feeling and why, really helps you build those healthier coping skills. And then those coping skills are the tools that you use to manage it. So just to turn stress into that strategic advantage, to widen that window of tolerance, know what tools you need to do under what situations to get the indicator light off. It starts with just kind of reflecting, what am I feeling and why? And you may need someone to help you walk through that and guide you through that as you get in the habit of it. And if you ever want to look for someone and are not sure where to start, feel free to drop me a note. I'm more than happy to tell you, like, hey, here's what this credential means. Here's where you might look to for that. I'm more than happy just to be that resource and sounding board. Lastly, feel free to screenshot this quote. I find it really helpful in helping us all remind ourselves that we are worth it, and that it is part of our job to lead ourselves so that we can step into that position of leading others, right? So if any of you feel like you need that permission slip, like this is it, screenshot it and save it for those moments when you feel like you need it. And then in the chat, what is one thing that you will do differently today? And it doesn't have to be big. How will you improve by 1%? And you can think on that. You can put it in as you think about it as we move to Q&A. But I always like to start closing with that question. Yes, I love it. Breathing 20 seconds looking at trees, going for a walk. Love it. And thankfully the weather is well, except for who said they were in Michigan, it's about to snow. Like, please wear, all the layers. But get the walking pad. I have a walking treadmill as well. Micro breaks. Awesome. Okay. Healthy food. Love it. All right. So turning it to Q&A, I'm going to leave this slide up though, just so people can screenshot it, write down my email. If you want to talk for 20 minutes, just to how do I apply this to my manager, to my team, to myself, more than happy to schedule a private call with any of you on here. Or just shoot me an email for the kind of detailed guide on some of these exercises. But PJ will also send the slide deck around. And with that, I think we have a few minutes for questions. Feel free to throw them in the chat, or I'm okay if people want to come off mute to ask. PJ, I don't know if that's okay with you, but
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. I forget to drink water and then I get yeah. Give yourself breaks more regularly. And I'll be honest, now I'm just filling time while somebody thinks of a question. So I'm just going to read the chat. Take walks, focus on breathing.
Well, I can say, Rachel, while people are thinking of what they might want to ask, you and I were talking prior to the session beginning about not knowing what's coming. How do you
Yeah.
prepare for that? Knowing that as HR professionals, we need to ourselves be prepared for how we're going to be able to handle it, but then we're looked to be the ones that kind of guide others in how to do it going forward. How do you do that when you know you may be dealing with the stress and anxiety, but you're also now looked to as the person to help guide others?
So thank you. This, right? Meeting your, like, taking care of your needs, right? Again, like if your needs aren't being met, you are not going to be able to react. Well, you will react, you will not respond well, right? And I try to make that distinction, right? The reactive is like this knee-jerk emotion thing, as opposed to responding in a strategic way. Like, one of the things that I heard yesterday, that we talked about yesterday, that, PJ, you and I talked about, is that there's almost an innate reactivity to your jobs, like even like when things are quote normal, right? And now it's like, like, dare to dream for that level of reactivity. There's no way to predict all the things that are going to happen today that may have even happened in the time that we have been spending together. But you will be able to respond to all of those things by ensuring that you are hydrated, like that you have the energy, right? That you've gotten sleep, that you've taken your care of yourself, right? That those resources are there, right? Again, filling up your reserves to meet those demands. It doesn't matter what those demands are. The only other piece I would add to that is just kind of the strategic piece of making sure you know what your organization's strategic goals are. Because I don't know everyone's backstory here, right? Fractional, CHROs and how, like, I don't know. So it could be like, you need to remember your client's strategic goals. It could be your in-house but whomever you're working with, those people are not here today. And they might be curled up in a fetal position, running around like a chicken with their head cut off, as my mom would say, right? And you are going to need to be there for them to remind them, like, hey, you said that the strategic goal was this. So whatever reactivity, pivot things that we need to do to keep the lights on now, do you still want to move in that direction? If you don't, that's fine. But we can't lose the North Star because we forgot about it. Right. And so I would just say, make sure you're pairing it with also that kind of business strategy side. Because again, right, HR is the backbone of the organization. And you're here today, so you'll be able to do that and be that vision, and that will just help you further have that seat at that table. And so I would just, the two pieces, right? Invest in yourself, but then know the strategic direction and be that guide for them, because they're not here today to learn it.
It's great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And so much as Rachel has said, you're not alone in this. We are all human, and in what we're dealing with, regardless of whether it is personal, professional, you know, everybody's going through something at some time. And I loved how you started things off by saying, you're taking it out on an Uber driver, or perhaps they're having a really bad day and they don't know. So it's giving people grace. I feel like honestly, we're throwing back to how we were trying to talk to people during COVID as well. But it's just taking that time to allow people to be themselves, but understanding that may not be you. And I know a lot of what we do in HR is about that, is taking someone else's bad day when they take it out on us, because we're that person they're talking to, and we're the ones that they're going to be coming to fix everything, which sometimes we can do and sometimes we can't. So we certainly truly do appreciate, Rachel. I think these have just been some amazing resources, tips, ideas, things that we can do. You guys have been fantastic in the chat with all of the different ideas while Rachel was talking, putting in different things that you can do, from the walking, the box breathing, the kind of the treadmill walking, and all the different things that you can do. A lot of it is us trying to multitask, trying to do as much as we can. But as Rachel said, most importantly, and I talk about this so much at the roundtable as well, it's a big focus, I think, for all of us to definitely take care of ourselves and remember that you can't do that. You can't take care of anyone else if you aren't able to do that for yourself.
Yeah.
Any other last words, Rachel?
No, just thank you all so much for being so interactive, and I am just so glad that this was helpful. And again, please, I'm part of the team. However I can help, just let me know, um, and just reach out.
Absolutely. And as Rachel said, please do reach out to her to get that additional handout. However, I will certainly be sending out a summary as well as the recording. Thank you all again so much for joining us. We hope that you have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Thanks again, everybody.
Bye.